Happy Pride Month, everybody. This is The World According to Jen and Carolyn. Hello, Carolyn.
Hello, Jennifer.
Happy Friday, as we say in the office world.
Last day of May, 100 days of May.
I know. I
you
can't
done?
believe it. What is 100 days of May?
Well, it's like when you have a kid, they say just May is the most complicated month for parents.
I mean, school-wise, I could see that, and especially since I am a class parent. It gets a little hectic. All of a sudden, you need 3 boxes of See's candy for the teachers in your kid's classroom.
Yes, you do.
And it's coming out of your own pocket because your class funds have been depleted.
Shouldn't we be giving them apples?
I know. No, I got them.
I'd rather have candy.
I think most people would. And these See's candy boxes were so cute. They said teachers rule.
They
had
do.
a ruler and like apples and stuff. Yeah. And
Sweet.
my kids' teachers especially rule.
Yay, teachers.
Not what we're here to talk about. What we are kind of talking about the traditional white nuclear family, because we're going to be talking about the Tradwives movement. Do y'all know what the Tradwives movement is?
I had no idea what the
know.
hell you were talking about when you first said that term, which I think shows you what kind of feed the algorithms are giving me.
Yeah.
But then as we've been talking about, I'm like, I know all about this.
Yeah.
I know exactly what this is.
Totally. But it's become this social media sensation. So it's defined as a burgeoning movement of women who spend their days taking care of their homes and families and documenting their activities on social media. And so that's what it is essentially. And so, if that's what somebody wants to do,
Yes.
that's completely fine.
Absolutely.
But it's become this social media kind of, I won't say juggernaut because it's not super, super popular, but it's popular enough to have taken off. So we want to look at it. We want to look at how it started versus what it is now. And, is this a simple matter of good for thee, but not for me? Or does this movement have potential ramifications for people like me and Carolyn who happen to be feminists and, don't want to necessarily be stay-at-home wives?
Well, and these aren't the Martha Stewarts of the world.
No.
Like I grew up on Martha Stewart. I love her, still do. There's something anyone with an ounce of conscience, you watch these and it's weird.
It is very weird. It's very fetishy.
Yes.
And Martha Stewart, let's not forget, one, she's been to prison and she'll beat your ass. She's badass, but
She's got
also
Snoop Dogg on her side now.
She does have Snoop Dogg. She's more gangster than Snoop Dogg. She's been to prison. But also she's a businesswoman at her core. So she's like the ultimate feminist. She took these domestic kind of traditionally female topics.
Yeah.
And made them a multi-million-dollar
beyond
industry.
cooking.
Yeah.
She could make a hutch.
She could do all types of stuff. Martha Stewart.
And there
we could do a whole ass episode on Martha.
But she also wasn't trying to bring you into although some people say it was cult-like, but she didn't have a political agenda.
I don't think so. No, but that's what's happened with this movement. So we're going to get to that. But what kind of made me and Carolyn think, oh, maybe this is a good topic to cover is that Harrison Butker dude, the Kansas City Chiefs kicker who did a commencement speech at Benedictine College, really got us thinking about this topic. So we have some highlights or lowlights rather from this transcript. And I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn to kind of read us through this.
Yeah. Butker. What a name.
Maybe it's Bootker. I don't know.
I'm going to call him Butker.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate.
Can I just call him Butt Turd?
Yes.
Okay. Butt Turd then takes aim at the LGBT plus community saying, quote, I am certain the reporters at AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead be met with excitement and pride, not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost.
Oh, I love it. Let me read the next one. I'm going to bring it to you. We're going to alternate here. This is going to be dope. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and mother.
I cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
Sweet. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you ask her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. So bad.
As men, we set the tone of the culture, and what is absent disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. I don't know. That didn't make sense to me. This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural masculation of men.
Wow, that's a lot. So he seems to think that the response to the pandemic was excessive, saying, we cannot buy into the lie that the things we experienced during COVID were appropriate. Over the centuries, there have been great wars, great famines, and yes, even great diseases that came with a level of lethality. Lethality. Cool. And danger. But in each of those examples, church leaders leaned into their vocations and ensured that their people received the sacraments.
What the?
So the Holy Spirit cures disease. Cool, bro. Cool. So I don't know about you, but I'm not entirely surprised when I hear these sorts of sentiments from dudes, especially white men with wealth and privilege.
He literally looked like a commander from
The Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, totally. For sure. So, but I am always freaked out when someone from a historically marginalized group longs for what they consider to be the good old days, like the 50s and 60s. So, before we dive into this Tradwife movement, I think it's important to first take a look, as far as we're concerned, how far women have come in the U.S. So we're going to do just a brief look back on some of the highlights of the strides women have made in the U.S. So in 1769, American colonies based their laws on the English common law, which was summarized in the Blackstone commentaries. It said, by marriage, the husband and wife are one person in the law. The very being and legal existence of the woman is suspended during the marriage, or at least is incorporated into that of her husband, under whose wing and protection she performs everything. All right, we're going to skip ahead to some of the highlights. So in 1866, the 14th Amendment is passed by Congress. Component of the 14th Amendment is that for the first time, citizens and voters are defined as male in the Constitution. So, a lot of shit happened in between then and when we got the right to vote. In 1870, I bet a lot of you don't know this, Victoria Woodhull was the first woman to run for president. I don't think I knew that
Victoria.
Either. She was rad. So then we finally where is it? I think it was in 1919 that we got the right to vote. Somehow I missed that in here. Oh, I'm sorry. 1920. 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says we have the right to vote. Yay.
Only white women, though? Or all women?
All women.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Crazy shit. So 1963, Equal Pay Act. 1969, no fault divorce, which is huge. We talked about that in a previous episode. 1994, thank you, Joe Biden. The Violence Against Women Act went through. It funds services for I can't talk tonight.
That's all right.
Shouldn't have had all that alcohol.
Why?
I know. I had a lot to drink and I took a gummy.
Did your husband say it was okay?
He's out of town, so I don't care. It's all good. He's out golfing. I'm here taking care of the child.
Oh, what a good traditional wife you are.
I really am. I am. So Violence Against Women Act, it's a good thing. And then, Hillary ran for president, 2023, a record number of women are elected to the Congress, with 128 elected in the House, 25 elected in the Senate. So we have come a long way.
White women have come a long way.
White women have. Women of color still have a long way to go, thanks to systemic racism.
And let's not even talk about trans women.
Right, exactly.
They have no rights.
Exactly. So, and it makes sense given the way that feminism started, where it was exclusively white women. And we had to get to second and third wave feminism to incorporate women of color
Equality.
and their voices. Yeah, totally. So,
but we got there. Because women usually figure it out within a century.
Yeah, we do. It takes us a lot less time, I think. It's crazy.
There's that.
I think before we talk about the Tradwife movement and its contrary vision to the equality and autonomy that women have been fighting for centuries that we just went through in a very brief timeline, I think we got to talk about this. So
yeah, where did it all start?
It's really crazy. So let's talk about where it started, what it is, and why I think it's so antithetical to everything we've been fighting for a very long time. So there's this woman, I called her a Tradwife goddess. The article did not call her that, I don't believe. Her name is Estee Williams. I think she's one of the OG Tradwives.
Okay.
And she describes the movement as, so the man goes outside the house, works, provides for the family. The woman stays home, and she's the homemaker. She takes care of the home and the children, if there are any. Tradwives also believe, she insisted, that they should submit to their husbands and serve their husbands and family.
Yeah, that's where I have a problem with it.
Yeah, that's where you lose me, girl.
The submitting.
Yes. Yeah, no, and that's the differentiation between somebody like, a good friend of mine who economically it did not make sense for this person to go back to work. So they stayed home. Yeah. Well, husband went out, and I'm going to talk about this person later too. Went out, earned money, and was able to also earn a degree to make more money because of the domestic labor that was happening on the home front, thanks to his spouse. But where was I going with that? See, this is what happens when I eat weed. I can't say smoke weed anymore because it's really a gummy.
So she stayed at home. He went out.
Stayed at home. Exactly. There we go. Thank you for bringing me full circle and reminding me why I don't get high before I do this. So, there wasn't some belief that there was a submission requirement. It was economically, this is what makes sense. As much as my friend missed their vocation as a teacher, it's what made economic sense. It wasn't, I'm doing this because this is
there was their
biblical
choice.
Obligation.
There was choice, and there was identity within that role.
Right.
Independent.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Which, and if you want to do that, more power to you.
Exactly.
I have nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Like you said, it's
Good
the
for you.
latter part of the way this movement is described that doesn't resonate with us and probably a lot of other women, or at least women we'd hang out with.
Yeah.
So, the article also ends by saying their advocacy for the ideology and principles of so-called traditional gender roles in marriage ultimately have the effect of promoting a return to the days of coverture and an erasure of the hard-fought, if incomplete, gains of women's rights activists throughout America. And I think that's where my concern lies. That this could erode what we've worked for to an extent.
Well, it shows the amount of privilege it shows two things. It shows, you have the choice to do that, but also you have no idea what it was to say, well, I'm going back to something.
Right.
Like, that reeks of just immaturity about what actually life is like.
Right.
For women who don't have those choices.
And also,
who still exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Not of their own choice.
Right. And also their freedom. There's some kids screaming outside. It really threw me off. They're probably like middle schoolers, and they're screaming profanity. It reminds me of myself at that age. But yeah, it's crazy stuff. I can't remember what I was going to say. I'm so easily distracted. Anyway, yes, it's some crazy shit. I was going to make a good point. I completely forgot what it was. Anyway, we're moving on because this could take all night. Whee! So this is from a global network on extremism. and Technology article. And it's called Tradwives, the Housewives Commodifying Right-Wing Ideology. Over the course of 10 months, the authors tracked the online activity of 36 tradwives and found that these women use ideological radicalization, social media influencing, and a sophisticated understanding of social media platforms to commodify right-wing ideology. I got it. I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say they're right to put images of themselves out on the internet and to have that freedom to do so. I'm sorry, ladies, but you owe a debt of gratitude to the feminists that you do not want to be associated with.
Yes.
Because we're the ones that fought for you to be able to have a public identity that, you know, you can't be punished for.
Yeah. And to reject feminism.
Right.
And reject the option of education.
Yeah.
And to not get married.
Well, I don't think they associate some of those things with feminism. The option to get an education, they would never, give credit to feminists for making that possible, which is funny. It's like the people who talk about, oh, socialism, fuck socialism. And it's like, bro, do you like the fire department? Like, bro, these roads you're driving on, like, those, that's. So,
well, none of this has logical rationale. And that's the hallmark. And a lot of the articles I found was this really intense uptick, post pandemic, like 2021. And it makes sense because you did see a lot of people.
We were all at home.
And yeah, I was going to watch you make some bread and be like, cool, I'll watch that. But I also had a cookbook that I could look at that for.
Yeah. Totally.
Yep. I don't know.
Exactly. So, Carolyn, can you, since I mentioned the radicalization, can you enlighten us on the 3 types of tradwives according to the authors of this article?
Well, and so again, we're talking about 2 different things. There are subsets of religions that gender roles are submissive.
Right.
I fundamentally disagree with that. I don't, again, if you're not of an age where you're allowed to make those choices, I don't like that. That's not who we're really talking about, though. Right. We're talking about the subset of secular alt-right. And so this is what you found, and I'll talk about. Conservative right tradwives advocate for a #trad life within the home, supporting their husbands and children. These tradwives have clear conservative values, not just on politics, but on religion, and on the whole, do not engage with issues of race.
Interesting.
All right, so that's just one.
The unwillingness to engage alone, I'm sorry,
is racist.
Makes you racist.
Yes, I know, right? So the next type, conversely, is the alt-right tradwives are less characterized by the traditional housewife framing and instead present an ideological online persona rooted in alt-right identities, which enshrine value systems such as white supremacies, heteropatriarchy, and anti-feminism. There's a third kind, alt-light tradwives. They're like
alt-light.
Miller Light.
Low in carbs.
They're the bridge between conservative right and alt-right women, presenting a blended balance between the traditional feminine persona and conservative tradwives and the ideological driven alt-right. Okay. So, and also just so everyone knows what alt-right is.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's a term
I
most
think
of our
that
listeners
our
would
listeners
know?
would for sure know.
Okay,
what
all right.
folks
Just
are.
checking if you don't, Google that shit.
Yeah.
So alt-light tradwives broadly aligned with the beliefs of the alt-right, so again, traditionalism, nationalism, anti-feminism, but they're not into the white supremacy part, instead projecting the continuation of Eurocentric culture, which basically
it's the same thing.
It's the same fucking thing. Like they talk about liberals having too many words for things.
Yeah.
Come on.
This is a mouthful.
This is a mouthful.
Yeah. But I think it was liberals who created these labels. So we still have ourselves to blame for this. But it makes sense, damn it. I need all these words to understand things.
So I don't know. So the religious tradwives.
That's pretty self-explanatory.
Militia tradwives, political tradwives, militia tradwives.
You know what?
Minutemen tradwives.
Totally. You know what I saw when I looked that up? There was a picture of a pie, and the cutouts on top of the pie were all AR-15s, like around the circumference of the pie.
That's not funny. I don't want to laugh at that.
It's funny because it's so fucked up, man.
It just blows my mind that this is happening. So counterculture tradwives, all dedicated to very right, very frightening agenda. Yeah. This is just as scary to me as someone putting a swastika on a church. or a temple or a school.
It's crazy. The right-wing ones are pretty frightening to me because they rant against issues like abortion rights and, you know, being transgender and vaccinations. And, you know, that's what's scary when you start to propagate this hate and these lies. And I'm not saying they don't have the right to do it because I believe in the First Amendment. But when you start doing that, people who want to listen will listen. And there's momentum and there's serious action sometimes associated with what is initially a sentiment and a philosophy. And then it becomes somebody showing up in a fucking schoolyard and killing children.
Yeah.
And
we've seen that historically time and time again.
And I don't think we're being extreme. I don't think we're being hyperbolic in describing it that way either.
Well, and the internet created this.
Yeah.
Platform.
This would not exist without the internet.
No.
Just like catfish.
Right. Well, and again, this has always been around. This is not new. This is cyclical. This happens in histories and societies. But the rate at which it's happening and where it's being specifically targeted, that's why I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. And, you know, the article that I was referring to, I forgot what article I was talking about. Ultimately, the Tradwives challenge the modern role of women in society. They co-opt and retrench patriarchy in both traditional and creative new ways. And they're using their position and their influence on social media to perpetuate these crazy perspectives on wifely submission, like I said, abortion rights, birth control, racism.
All the
list
isms
goes on and on. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I don't know, Carolyn, you want to talk to us about free speech and what you think about all this crazy shit?
Sure. Well, you and I have said before, the internet giveth and it taketh, right? Accurate. So, you know, also it's interesting that the uptick we see post-pandemic, our nervous systems are fucking fried.
Yeah.
Do not tell me that you're not. And we're wrecked having to survive modern life emotionally and cognitively is exhausting. And so, you know, 2024 Forbes article notes, quote, in the digital realm, the mom sphere, I love it. Are you part of the mom sphere, Jen?
No, I'm not. Okay. Not at all. I'm not a joiner.
It's growing. And these are things that can be an online safe haven filled with mothers, wives, women, connecting to talk about things related to, you know, motherhood, cooking, relationships, parenting. Even our podcast fits in with that, right? We're trying to be a space that is inclusive and is to our audience. And this space gives rise to a development of an online community, one that allows women to empower, encourage, and support one another through challenges and joys of just being a woman, whether that's motherhood, whether that's marriage, whatever, however you define that. But here's what's interesting. So internet-based subcultures have gone from, you and I played around in the chat rooms, I know you did, in the 90s, to mainstream, pretty much toxic cults. And this is the term, the bait and switch, to the most vulnerable, most susceptible, and most in need of protection, young adults. And I define that between the ages of 12 and 24. You don't see 40, 50-year-old Tradwives online.
It's true. I think Estee Williams, if I'm not mistaken.
She's 23.
She's
really young. So
Yeah.
there has been extensive psychological research. You know me, I'm a data nerd, right? Extensive psychological research suggests that the surge in Tradwife content and adherence poses significant threats, not just to feminism, but broader to gender equality, given its concerning roots to the alt-right. And it fits the components of propaganda and this like you and I said, when we watched a lot of these videos, they have this kind of creepy overlay to them. Yeah. There's a cult-like feeling, not just from the current, but we know that the role of the actual traditional wife in the 1950s through the 60s, that's what pushed the women's movement forward. I don't think that would have happened if the role worked. It didn't work.
Right.
And it was actually, you know, this is what's being idealized in Tradwife culture. Not to mention that if you're actually talking about what a real traditional wife and family looks like, to pick such a very small time in history, if you go back in time, the family worked to survive. Everyone from dad, mom, kids, babies, everyone worked or you didn't eat.
And also we'll talk about this a bit later, but the 50s and the 60s looked a lot different for Black couples than it did for white couples.
Yes. Well, historically, it always has.
Yeah.
And so it's this 1950s version, which worked for one person, the dude.
Yeah, totally. The white dude.
Father knows best, right?
Yeah.
So again, propaganda historically is different than advertising, which is only concerned with commercial gain. Mm-hmm. So that's how you know if you're actually seeing an ad. But the two are often used as linked, or they're used inversely. Uh-huh. One is really manipulative. Propaganda is manipulative and one-sided, aka there's a hidden agenda within a very specifically constructed image.
Yeah.
And someone named Arlen Kunek did a 2023 article titled The Effects of Propaganda. He offers a really deep dive into the psychology of this tactic if you want to read more. But I like the definition that propaganda is a type of communication that often involves sharing biased or misleading information to promote a particular agenda or point of view. So propaganda has always been used to influence people's opinions, especially young people's opinions, and control their behavior through various tactics such as name calling, bandwagoning, sort of like trying to peer pressure people, or inciting fear. So again, what does all this have to do with Tradwives? Well, let me give you a little bit of more information here. About half of American kids say they are online all the time.
Yep.
This is a quote by psychologist and NYU professor and author of The Age of Anxiety. If you want to hear more research and thoughts on how social media, specifically TikTok, has influenced youth, check out his book. I put the link to the podcast in the show notes. Jonathan Haidt talks about how puberty in 2005 was really different than in 2010. And it caused a huge increase in the impact of social media. Again, as I mentioned, not really the pandemic. People kind of attribute the pandemic to that, but it was already happening prior to that.
Puberty earlier. Children
I'm sorry. Earlier. Kids having negative impact from social media.
I see.
People often correlate that with the pandemic. It was happening 10 years earlier.
I see. Okay.
And so in early 2010, Haidt writes, we stopped helping kids develop and gave them a device to help determine how to become adult. Puberty, as I've mentioned before, it's a phenomenal time.
Yeah.
It's an important, it can be.
It can be also mortifying.
It's all of it.
It's part of the fun,
guys. It's all of it. It's awkward as fuck. Yeah. But it is an important developmental and chemical stage in child development of all humans across the globe. And it's based on your environmental input. That is the hugest factor, not just genetics, but environment. So this is a time where the human brain's rewiring. It's in need of guidance. And Haidt's book goes into my favorite topic on sociology and anthropology. And again, he notes that around the world, historically, adults and elders help kids find their way. He goes on to correlate now that young people get zero help from most adults because adults are nailed to these devices and kids are.
I know.
So the data is astounding. We know through the mental health lens, it's more and more common to see younger and younger kids with high anxiety, suicide, all that stuff. We use pharmacology to treat this stuff. We also see on the other side of that, narcissism and grandiosity that the internet has given us.
Right.
Okay. So again, here's the link. I'm going to skip ahead. Here's the link to what made me think of his book and the connection between what we're talking about with Tradwives on social media. So Haidt states that, quote, a device that takes up all your attention is, you're drawn to basically random weirdos on the internet who are selected by an algorithm because of their extreme performance as voted on by other random weirdos on the internet. This is how kids are being socialized. And that makes a difference. This is all from his book. So I loved a piece that Callie Crosley, an American broadcaster and host of Under the Radar, did on why young women are rejecting feminism and becoming Tradwives. And she states, quote, in the case of Tradwives, young women, especially mostly white privileged women, are coaching other young women, not just to marry rich men, something called hypergamous coaching, which is a social science term that's basically the practice of marrying or dating someone who for their social status. And again, that's not bad. If you want to do that, go for it.
Yeah.
And we've seen this across time. If you've ever watched Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, have you ever watched that movie?
I told you
Marilyn Monroe.
Movie person.
It's great because she's in the scene where the father of the rich man she wants to marry, and he's like, you don't love him. He's a nerd. Like, and he's like, you're just marrying for his money. And she goes, no, I'm not. And he goes, what? And he goes, I'm marrying him for your money. The father, it's really funny. But anyway, so she provides comment on how, that's what's scary about this, that they're actually using a toxic anti-feminism to attract young women. And that's their hook and bait.
Okay.
So I'm going to get you with my Betty Crocker and my tits up and my red lipstick, all which I'm for.
Yeah.
Hypersexualize yourself, go for it. But then you have the other side of the bait and switch. And that's where you're going to see the algorithm lead you towards. You're following SD. Well, whatever she's interested in or what she's tagging, that's going to start going into your feed. And that's scary to me. And it's not being supervised.
No, it's not. And the internet is dependent upon figuring out what people want so they can give it to them in the hopes of getting them to buy things.
Yes.
Really. I mean, it's all about products.
Yeah.
And that's why the people who have the most followers on social media get these opportunities to hawk products.
And they don't have to prove anything.
No, they don't. Just popularity.
Yes.
That's it. On the basis of other weirdos liking their shit.
Yes, literally.
Fascinating stuff. It really is. So, I was thinking about this as we were putting this together. What happens when you want to leave a marriage? What do you do? And I think the reason why this movement is so frightening to me is because so many who abide by it, they're completely and totally dependent on a man. And what happens if and when the relationship goes south? And you're left with nothing because you have no skills outside of the home and zero financial independence, and your identity completely and totally reliant on a man because you cannot be a wife without a husband.
Yeah.
And we all know from stats that a lot of marriages don't last.
Yes.
So,
especially when you're getting married under the age of 25.
Yes, exactly.
Or 30 even.
We change significantly. I'm not saying, you can't have a successful marriage when you marry young.
It's a lot harder though.
But it is a lot harder. And
especially now that we live to 100.
Exactly. Y'all can wait. Trust me. So this is from a Ms. Magazine article entitled Why the Tradwife Life is More Dangerous Than Ever Before. And that says, gone are the days when women receive lifetime alimony after sacrificing their careers to raise children and tend to home. This arrangement, while it can work for some couples, allows the man to continue climbing the career ladder and increase his earning power. However, his wife's marketable skills often lose relevance, and if they divorce, her age makes re-entering the workforce challenging. So,
fact.
Yeah, this is where I started to tell you about my friend and their relationship and end of their relationship with their husband. And I remember them telling me, I let him handle all of the finances. And now he's trying to fuck me, and I don't have access and I don't have the information. And so there were things that she didn't have the legal rights to because they entrusted this person to, take care of them to an extent. And what was so sad is that watching all of this person's labor in the way that the soon-to-be ex-spouse talked about them to the judge, it was really dismissive and terrible, especially since this person left the house every day to go and work. And this person obtained their master's degree while with my friend, because my friend took care of the kids full time so that, he could study, get his degree and earn more in the field that he was in. And all of my friend's labor was erased in the eyes of the law.
Yes.
And that's what's fucking sick to me. And that's what these trad wives need to take into consideration. If you're not only your identity, but your economic security is not only inextricably linked to a man, but they've set it up to where you have no rights or limited rights.
Scary.
That's really scary.
And that's what feminism tried to reverse.
Yeah. I mean, we couldn't have credit cards until it was sometime in the 70s.
Yeah.
was fucking crazy. It was pretty recent.
Someone should probably take my credit card away.
I know.
Will you be in charge of? No.
Don't trust me. I'm the worst person. Actually, I'm pretty good. Me and Bill are going to put them on ice anyway. So again, we have no problem with women who want to stay home and take care of the kids and the husband, whatever. But I have a problem with, as we mentioned, those extreme right-wing views who push for me and other women to be robbed of our freedoms. And I have a serious problem, as you can probably tell from my story, with any woman giving up financial control to her spouse.
Yeah.
And it's especially problematic when men exert control over their wives using financial means when a woman wants to leave, but is financially dependent on her husband. And that was my friend's situation.
Yeah.
Like it was like extortion.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
And that's common. I think when any partner.
Yeah.
It's
abusive. It really is. It is a type of abuse.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. It is.
It's awful.
It's financial.
It's so awful.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, for many women, financial security is one of the biggest considerations that factor in when deciding whether to stay in an unhappy marriage or divorce. And as a result, there is a significantly large number of women who actually stay in marriages that are unhealthy and borderline dysfunctional, and most women who are divorcing, they can't afford to stay home long term anyway. They have to reenter the workforce and possibly at a much reduced salary from what they're used to. So it's really fucked up for us, like most things. Yeah. But fear not, ladies. There's a study by online legal marketplace Avocado, which revealed that the majority of divorced women, 73%, that's huge, did not regret the decision to end their marriage and actually found themselves happier living the single life, even though they were worse off financially. Can't put a price on freedom, bitches.
No, exactly. I agree with that. Anytime you leave something that's not good for you.
Yeah.
Punt.
Yeah. And
get out.
It's interesting. So Francis Financial conducted a study on women, money, and divorce in their Unveiling the Unspoken Truth white paper. So more than 150 divorced women were interviewed, and the results were extremely powerful. The most important message these formerly married women wanted to share with other soon-to-be divorced comrades was to get smart about money. So know your choices. So Carolyn, I know you work with a lot of married couples. Hetero couples.
Yeah, mostly.
Does this come up?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think, again, even just in any dating, and you and I have talked about this too, how to have those conversations. But according to the Gottman Institute research, it's important to build trust and to openly discuss financial concerns. Ideally, it's best to have open disclosure, not just about finances prior to marriage or moving in together. If that doesn't happen, the next best thing is to devise a plan to do it as soon as possible. Money, you'd be surprised. Money, and when most people come to couples therapy, the two things that are the hardest to talk about are money and sex.
Okay.
We can talk all day long about chores and this and that, but the minute you bring up intimacy, and money's extremely linked to codependency, as I've talked about before. So money obviously is a touchy subject, but, there's no right or wrong way to deal with it necessarily. It's just, the first thing I told my now boyfriend is, I have a lot of debt for student loan. And when we were talking about marriage, it was like, hey, how do you feel about that? Cause that's kind of, I guess that's his tattoo once we got married, right? Kinda. And so it's like, that's something I want you to know. We sat down, we talked about our finances. We had not an uncomfortable conversation. We had just an honest conversation about what our expectations were and how we do things. Well, I've grown up a little. I listen to you. So you got to debt proof your marriage. And this is something financial expert and author Mary Hunt suggests, that money issues are deeply buried in our emotions. Thus, it's difficult to know what we believe or where our money attitudes come from unless we talk about it. Hunt believes that despite potential pitfalls, financial conversations are absolutely necessary. I'm going to say all fucking conversations with your partner. Talk about it.
Totally.
She states knowledge is power. Learning why money is so difficult is helpful to help you take a huge leap towards financial harmony. So yes, I have observed this, and I've experienced this in a lot of my former relationships, although I was never married or living with anyone, but I kind of denote it more to the immaturity of the relationship. Younger for sure, but I've also worked with adults who just lose not just their financial, but their sense of self. Right. And I think that's any relationship. That to me, when the we becomes I, and one partner loses himself, that does not usually end well, unless the partner is just really complacent, doesn't give a shit, and then it's fine. If that works for you. But whenever you're losing an identity that includes financial, social, or physical, and I've watched unfortunately a ton of ex-Tradwife videos, which were horrifying. They also, again, I'll note, they all seem to be in their late 30s and 40s.
Okay.
But they talked about their experience. And what I observed was really this was coming from a place of trauma and really just a cycle of abuse. It had all the major, points that you see in the power and control wheel of abuse, which I put in our show notes. Your finances should never be dependent on another person, let alone someone who fundamentally values your worth based on what you do for them, how you look, and how you perform. And that is the Tradwife marital dynamic. So, again, having, like I said, I recently moved in with my partner, and I've had to practice a lot of what the research, asks you to do, which it is a little uncomfortable, and it's embarrassing to talk about, my money spending or my credit shit.
Yeah. No, I get it.
But it's important to,
especially when you're us.
Here's another thing. Yeah, I know, right? I look pretty in my dress, don't I? My Botox, but I pay it off. I pay it off. That's not true. I'm good. I'm not as bad. No, but here's another thing that I noticed too that people are a little weird about talking about is the gender roles.
Sure.
And unless you're in a same-sex relationship where that sort of isn't really a thing, but it still pops up, right? Sure. But if you have, I lost my place. Sorry. Yeah. So if you don't think there are gender roles in your current relationship, I want you to check your privilege.
Oh, dude, there totally are.
Because they absolutely impact the relationship. And I don't know if that's it's not good or bad, but you got to talk about this stuff. If you find yourself consistently doing the dishes or doing certain tasks that feel that to me, I'm happy to do those things, but I have an expectation that we both do those things.
Sure.
It's nothing's woman's work in our home.
No, exactly.
It's mutual, and my partner's just as happy to do those things. But I'm going to go back to that Forbes article that I talked about, because I thought this quote was really, this data was really fascinating. So they talk about, while historical and recent research has explored the impact of gender conformity on self-esteem and affect, the contemporary findings underscore the crucial need to distinguish between autonomous and pressured motivations for gender consistent behavior. So conversely, the study revealed that positive correlation between privately valuing one's gender identity and autonomous motivation is associated with elevated positive self-esteem.
Okay.
I feel like that's you and I.
Yeah.
I'm happy to put on my cute little outfit and bake for my boyfriend because that makes me happy.
Sure.
And I'm happy to share that. I also am super thrilled when he does those things.
Exactly.
It's not something I'm being forced to do.
Yeah.
We don't have that dynamic. And if we did, we would not be together.
No, definitely not.
So you're going to see a positive influence and a negative influence based off your motivation.
I see.
And so this is what these videos are leaving out. Don't lose yourself in the process of again, becoming a we in anything, not just your job, your family relationship. Feminism to me is always about making choice, and having anyone controlling or having authority on anything, it gives you nothing when that's taken away. And one of the ex-Tradwives videos, I love this quote, "A man is not a plan."
That's very true.
Right on.
It's absolutely true. And, that plays into the fact that these women, these ex-Tradwives who are now saying, hey, that there's an issue with this philosophy, that they're in their 30s and 40s, because stereotypically, what do a lot of men want? They want that young, sexy wife.
Gross.
So what went wrong in that relationship?
Well, she got old. You also don't see socially, what I would say, sort of unattractive Tradwives.
They're all traditionally attractive.
So what do you do if you have that philosophy, but you don't fit the mold?
Exactly. You grow older than the mold. Or you outgrow the mold. It's inevitable for all of us.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. And I don't think any of them would necessarily say that a component of being a Tradwife is being young. But look at the popular ones.
Yeah, look at them.
Yeah. Yeah. They're all incredibly young.
That's a lot of social media too.
It's true. And we will talk a bit very soon about the appeal to young people given the state of the world. Yeah, exactly. And women too, given the prospects these days. Everything is a goddamn mess economically. But before we go there, well, we are going to touch on economics, but economic privilege specifically, and historically white privilege that's typically inherent in these sort of traditional arrangements. So, you know, this is from a Times article that I thought was really good, or a Time article, sorry. You know, 1950s America, it was a veritable marriage propaganda machine. And we talked about that. Like consumerism, marriage, inextricably linked, and selling to this new, you know, burgeoning middle class, you know, post World War II, like boom folks, they wanted to buy. Yeah. And, you know, these two things are interlinked. And
advertising created the housewife.
Totally. Yeah. And then the article goes on to say matrimony has been tied to class for millennia. And during the Victorian era, middle-aged and upper-class women were expected to pour every bit of their morally pristine energy into tending to their homes and families. But people who were enslaved or poor people of any race need not apply to wedded bliss. I love the way that's written. And it's absolutely true, because to have wedded bliss, one needs leisure time, and leisure time is
leisure,
right?
It's such a thing with Tradwives.
It is. And it's not something that's afforded to the poor. And I touch on this somewhere later in my research, but I'll bring it up now. It's like most people in this day and age, particularly in the area we live in, they can't afford to not have both parents or both members of the couple working. Yeah. You know, it's not possible. Yeah. I mean, we live in a city where below $110,000. If you make less than that, you're considered impoverished. You're below the poverty line in San Francisco. That's fucking crazy. In other states, you'd live like a goddamn queen. So crazy. So there's that, right? And women who toiled at backbreaking jobs, they often envied housewives and viewed the home, you know, not work as fulfilling aspect of their life. And so the reaction of Black women to white feminism, demanding to enter the workforce often was, this is Bell Hooks saying this, not me, was we want to have more time to share with our family. And that's what Bell Hooks wrote in 1984. We want to leave the world of alienated work. Alienated work is a Marx term, Karl Marx, if I remember correctly. I'm going way deep. I read the Communist Manifesto many times. For the love of God, I've got a red star tattooed on my foot. Anyway, but it talks about, you know, craftspeople. It was their product. It was their craft. And the more things become commodified, commercialized, assembly lined, for lack of a better word, the more alienated one is from what they're producing. You know, and that's all I remember.
No, well, that's a really interesting point you're bringing up, because one of the, I wish I could remember where I saw this, but one of the, YouTubes I was looking at was a feminist writer who was talking about how really men and capitalism took the homemaker away from women. You know, this idea of like weaving was women's work. You could do it and watch your kids. And also there were no textiles being produced. So when they created the textile industry, these women had nothing to do. So they were forced to go into labor and had to abandon their kids. Right. And she was talking about all these crazy stories about like women who couldn't breastfeed. So they'd feed their babies opium. So they could survive, and terrible, horrible things. But, you know, it's like women are told to do something, and then they're punified for that. You know, and it's like, which do I stay in the home? Do I go to work? What do I do?
Well, it's like that. And guys, I'm dying because God damn it, the dog. So
I thought she was going to knock the drum set.
So we've relocated our recording location. This is going to be a really long episode because I'm so high. We relocated into the guest room, which has tons of big vag energy. There's like female archetypes all over. It's gorgeous. The lighting is lovely. We're no longer in my husband's man cave, which is littered with sports fucking paraphernalia. But anyway, there's my child's drum set, which of course he never played, that I'm intending to sell. And I moved it so we wouldn't get reverb off of it. And I put it in the doorway. and the dog was like trying to maneuver coming in. And I was like, well, Carolyn's talking. I'm like, that thing's going down. That thing's fucking going down. Though. She navigated it. She hit it a bit with her tail.
She has to be part of everything.
She really does.
Don't make noises.
Yeah, exactly. She's pretty much a living rug, you guys. So, yeah. So, back to that. What Bell Hooks was saying, she was saying, when you've spent years improving other women's domestic lives for little pay, inhabiting your own with a stable partner feels like a sacred privilege. So white women were like, I want to get out of the fucking home. I want to get into the work world. And it sounds like black women were like, dude, I want to just spend more time at home with my partner, man.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. I'm tired of cleaning your dumb shit.
I've been working. Like, you all don't understand. It's not all it's cracked up to be, especially when you're doing domestic work. And my mom, though white, was a housekeeper. She cleaned people's houses for a living. And that is hard fucking work. And it was absolutely imperative that she did so. She was a single parent too. So crazy shit. Anyway, so there was a 2013 study out of the University of Virginia and Harvard that found that the shift from authoritarian marriage to companionate marriage among equals came at a price, literally. Yeah. And the couples who can throw money at their problem, from therapy to date nights, to babysitters, throw your money at me, right? Have a better chance of surviving. It makes sense.
Well, because that gives you low stress.
It gives you less stress and more freedom and nothing.
It's a privilege.
The only thing, honestly, Bill and I ever really fight about, like, we bicker a lot, but it's mostly comedic. But the real arguments tend to center around money and our terrible spending habits, which we've now changed. But, I get how money is the thing that really can damper the romance.
Well, wouldn't you just love if he just took everything over and then your little brain wouldn't have to worry about it?
No. And also, I finally make as much as he does.
Wow.
I finally caught up. Guys, we have the same education level. We both have masters from the same university in the same discipline. He just happened to have, and I'm not trying to diminish his accomplishments, better connections than me. And I'm a woman. And he'd walk, we could walk into similar roles and he would start at a higher rate than me, and that's just by virtue of being a white man in the society. And he wouldn't disagree because, he's a good feminist, but I digress. So Carolyn, can you talk a bit about how, based on what I just mentioned, how the Tradwife movement reinforces white supremacy?
Yeah, we've been kind of talking about that a little bit, but maybe haven't made it super clear, because I think that it is, you kind of think of this and you're like, oh, again, Betty Crocker type chick. Sounds great. I'll listen to her and she's cute to look at.
Is Betty Crocker a real person?
I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. Anyway, so I want to get a little more specific on how I've talked about the bait and switch, right? So first of all, these are our opinions, which we have the right to have, but I personally believe this is serious. And I think this in general about influencers. And I think this in general about social media. And yes, I understand the irony that we are on social media. And I'm not trying to really be an influencer. We have something to say. But influencers on social media platforms have been instrumental in packaging far-right populist movements as attractive content.
Have you ever watched Fox News?
Hell no.
Okay.
Well, I'm familiar.
I do on occasion, because Bill says, "Know my enemy." And I'm like, you better shut the curtains. I want no one to look in our window and see us watching Fox News. But have you seen all the women on that show?
Yeah. Well,
on that station?
Who was the guy? Roger.
Oh God, I don't
remember. Some piece of shit. Yeah. Right. But yeah, they're all hyper feminine, high heels, which again, those are things you and I, that's how I identify as a feminine, or as a feminine. That's how I identify my femininity. Yeah. Is I enjoy being hyper femme.
Sure.
I don't, but you're right. It's not like there's no Nancy Maddox on Fox News.
Oh, Rachel Maddow.
Rachel Maddow.
Yeah.
Who's Nancy Maddow?
Yeah, I think you mixed up like Nancy Grace Nancy Grace is something, man.
Rachel Maddow's.
Rachel Maddow's way doper
different.
than Nancy Grace, although she does cover true crime.
Super hot.
Yeah, I'm into
her.
that look. Yeah,
it's like a Tammy. Anyway.
We're not going to discuss our bisexual tendencies tonight.
All right. So anyway, 2022 study published in Media and Communication delves into the way Tradwife vloggers, which is basically a video blogger. I didn't even know what that was. I'm so stupid.
So you've heard the word and you're like, what's that?
I thought it was, do you want to know what I thought it was?
Yes.
I thought it was called a vlogger because they had vaginas.
Oh, that's really cool.
It's so stupid.
I like that.
Oh, anyway, vloggers video stylistically thread alt-right anti-feminism into the broader online influencer culture by repeatedly displaying aesthetic content associated with feminine identity, home, and family. These influencers create a powerful visual narrative that resonates with a very, very wide global audience.
Yeah.
Hitler was only getting the German youth.
When you're only printing flyers, there's only so much you can, maybe using radio.
Seriously, that's us. Yeah. Our propaganda is the saddest.
Our propaganda is circa 1942 technology.
Seriously.
Oh God.
but it's grassroots,
Ours
right?
is positive, not like who was Hitler's minister of propaganda again? Not Goebbels.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I should know that. I just can't think it straight.
We don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll figure it out.
All right. So where was I? So this mode of, the way that this is being showed, it serves as a potent tool for spreading anti-feminist sentiment and is dangerously digestible and aesthetically pleasing far beyond online communities.
Okay.
So every single Tradwife influencer that I saw taking things that basically, like I said, I can find in a cookbook, acting like they fucking invented the best way to make a goddamn chicken.
It's all some flavorless, bad white people food anyway. Nobody needs that.
Well, and here's the thing. Yes,
it was Goebbels. I'm right.
It is Goebbels. Okay, I was like, that sounds weird. Is that what Gerber?
Sounds very
that's
German.
Not what Gerber's after.
No.
Okay. All right.
I have so much editing to do.
Dear Lord. So again, learning hacks is cool. Cut to me YouTubing how to fucking cut the best way to cut a mango.
Oh yeah, that's
but
necessary.
It ends there. I don't get like diverted from how to cut a mango into some fucking weird ass alt-right shit
and be subservient to my husband,
right? And then overthrow the government.
January 6th.
Again, you have to think about who's looking at this, who's accessing this, and this is for so many young men and women. It doesn't just end at that tutorial. These women they're trying to indoctrinate you into their circle.
Yeah.
And there's usually, again, subscribers and things like that. And like we've talked about, it has this cult-like seediness and it's a bait and switch.
Yeah.
And propaganda in the last 10 years and in the age of social media, specifically luring young men and women, it makes me more frightened because of the nature of propaganda. And let's take an old yucky man, little boy, Andrew Tate. Do you remember Andrew Tate?
No.
Okay. Well, Andrew Tate shows, there's an article by Amanda Marcotte. Basically, Andrew Tate was like a keyboard warrior trying to show men how to date and get women.
Oh,
and he lived in Romania, and he basically was like, I'm so rich and famous, and you can get all, and he spread toxic shit about abusing women. People were observing him anyway. So, a Salon article written in 2022, Amanda Marcotte writes, this article, it's called Andrew Tate Shows How Fascists Recruit Online. Men Fall Victim to the Insecurity to Fascism Pipeline.
Wow.
So, basically it looks like young men's dating woes or fitness attracts them online, but then they're basically indoctrinated into misogyny and
this is like incel shit.
This is very
exactly
similar.
Yeah,
absolutely. So Tate is just the latest example of the way that far right figures lure in young men by preying on their insecurities. So once the influencers suck in, so again, the Tradwife is valuable to the husband. These men want the trad wife. That's what's really is bringing this on. So they start by redirecting audiences' energies towards fascist organizing. Tate is just a piece of a larger puzzle that explains, for instance, how so many otherwise normal young men get wrapped into groups like the Proud Boys and actions like storming the Capitol on January 6th.
Jesus Christ.
And, again, it's this article talks about how the strategy is really simple. Quote, far-right online influencers position themselves to self-help gurus ready to offer advice on making money, working out, crucially attracting female attention. But it's a bait and switch. Rather than getting good advice on money or health, audiences are often hit with pitches for cryptocurrency scams or useless but expensive supplements, or even worse, being offered genuine guidance on how to be more appealing to women. They're often encouraged to, this is where the incel shit comes up, blame women, especially feminism, for their dating woes.
Yep.
So again, Ash Shakar writes in a piece about Andrew Tate for GQ. Sorry, I don't have the date for that. She writes, quote, it's certainly true that male privilege ain't delivering what it used to. Women don't have to sit around waiting to be chosen anymore, but instead are often holding out for male partners who treat them with respect and dignity. One way for men to respond to this, which many do, is to embrace a more egalitarian worldview and become the partners women desire. You and I found them.
What a concept.
What a concept. Yeah. But what Tate and other right-wing influencers like him offer male audiences is grievance, an opportunity to lash out at and basically be misogynistic towards women and people of color.
Yeah.
That's where it goes next. And anyone who doesn't fit the mold.
Right.
So they often dangle out hope of a return to a system where economic and social dependence on men force women to settle for unsatisfying and abusive relationships. So, I think I've talked to you about Fargo, the series.
Yeah, and I haven't watched it
It's phenomenal. So that's what made me go, oh, I know what that is. Because in the last season, they do an episode, on sort of this role of three women, really. This was my interpretation of how they were looking at Tradwives. Juno Temple, Jennifer Jason Leigh plays a phenomenal character. You love her. And Rebecca Litter, all impacted by the role of the kind of, quote, man who desires a Tradwife, played by none other than John Hamm. And there's another great article. So there's a great connection between a lot of the roles that women play in Fargo anyway. But like we've said, I don't mind if you're doing this stuff, but you have to be, I implore parents to be observing what I did have a male client in his early 20s who talked about really falling down the rabbit hole and doing things and looking on the internet and getting kind of into this. And really, this guy was torn up and did some really fucked up shit. He was in a fraternity and did some really fucked up shit to women. And it was really sad to work with him because he really talked about how all of the root of all of this started with him going on the internet and looking at Andrew Tate like content.
I get that. I do, because I think so many of us walk through life, and we've talked about this in the cult episode, thinking we're not susceptible to this.
No.
We're not susceptible to joining a cult or propaganda or
dating an abusive man.
Yeah. Succumbing to an ideology that we find distasteful. I think we overestimate our psychological inclination to fall for some of these tricks.
And these guys are predator. And this is just as predatory. They're the best fucking advertisers there are.
Oh yeah. No, it's deliberate. It's smart from a really sadistic and fucked up perspective, but these folks know what they're doing.
Yes.
And it's just, that's how propaganda works. And propaganda also works by saying that person over there from that particular group, they're responsible for all your problems. I saw a meme recently that said somebody being on welfare is not responsible for any of your problems. And it's so true.
Yeah.
But how many angry white people, poor, impoverished white people are there out there who have more in common with a brown person in the same financial boat, a black person, pointing at those two races and saying you're the problem because they have succumbed to the Fox News line of propaganda, which is people of color, immigrants, etc. They're responsible because it's a distraction.
Yes.
You know,
a calculated distraction.
It's a deliberate distraction because the real problem is the system. But we ain't going to talk about that tonight because that's a big topic. So, you know, I think we want to close by saying that, again, we're like, but Generation Z kids, they're so cool. Like, how would they fall for this? But in reality, shit really sucks for Gen Z, you know, and I can see to an extent, based on what this one article said, it said conditions for young people are quite frankly bad. Nodding to the slower economic growth that younger generations face today. And this pushes young people into a tendency to look back at the past with rose-tinted glasses. I can see that.
Oh, yes.
I get
it. It all makes a lot of sense historically.
It does.
And when you mix that with the social media boom of
or
2010s.
Media in general, look at the way like even the 80s are portrayed in shows like Stranger Things. People are like, the 80s looked fucking dope. And it's like, okay, the 80s to an extent were dope, but
they're not showing you the AIDS crisis.
They're not showing you the AIDS crisis. They're not showing you how,
what was going on in Iran,
treated, what was going on in Iran. Yeah. Like not what was going on in Latin America, you know, like the U.S. was perpetrating. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that either tonight. But anyway,
you can't just look at one piece.
Right.
You have to look at everything.
Yeah. And there are plenty of movies out there that depict the good, the bad, and the ugly. So please don't look at one aspect. Don't look at Mad Men and be like, dope. Also, if you're looking at Mad Men and thinking dope, there's something wrong with you.
Well,
look at the way the women are treated.
But it's so clearly in there. I mean, that should be. Yeah. That's like the epitome of what the Tradwife
exactly.
Exactly. Poor Betty.
I love the furniture.
Spoiler alert.
Right? I love the furniture. I love the clothes. I don't like the treatment. Yeah, exactly. But not the way he treated women.
Yeah.
And not the way women were treated in general. So, you know, I think our final thought on this is basically this. I look at this kind of like religion, this movement where believe what you want, but don't you dare try to impose your lifestyle on any other women who don't subscribe to this philosophy. And also, you know, even those in the movement who like Estee, and there was this other woman who was like an OG Tradwife. They're like, it didn't start out this way. It wasn't about racism. It wasn't about classism. So even folks like that who claim not to be racist or classist, they need to think about how the very essence of this movement is steeped in a very rich history of white supremacy culture and economic exclusion. So, you know, kind of look at it through a modern lens. The cost of everything is going up while wages are largely stagnant, you know, and it's hard for folks to even buy homes around here. It's crazy. I know people who make like $200,000+ a year and they're like, we can't afford to buy a home. I'm like, that's fucking insane. So, you know, most people can't afford to have a spouse, most likely the woman, stay home and do this. So there is great privilege inherent in the ability to do this. And so it's rare, it's privileged. So please don't act like this is a lifestyle that we can all achieve if we really want it. Your very existence is one of privilege that most of us cannot afford. And in Jen and Carolyn's case, don't want.
Nope.
So yeah.
We like, you know, equality, inclusion, equanimity, all those things.
Yep, exactly. And propaganda is frightening. So
yes,
but we're gonna throw some propaganda at you. Follow the world according to Jen and Carolyn on TikTok at twat. That's TWATJC.
We're twat wives.
We're twat wives. That's the world according to Jen and Carolyn. If you're wondering what the acronym stands for. So yeah, check us out.
Yeah,
keep listening. Definitely try to subscribe on Apple and Spotify and download our episodes because that's how we keep track of who's listening. So if you're listening, show us some love.
Yay.
All right. Bye, motherfuckers.
Bye.